For most of its long and often controversial development, Star Citizen has been defined by what it wasn't yet. Missing technology, unstable builds, and systems that simply couldn't scale held the project in a perpetual state of waiting. But as 2025 came to a close, that framing finally started to change. According to Cloud Imperium Games, this past year was the year of playability, and whether you fully agree with that claim or not, Star Citizen is undeniably entering 2026 in a stronger technical position than it ever has before. In case you missed my last video, I strongly recommend going back and watching that, as I did a deep dive into the full development history of Star Citizen to see what it took to get the game to where it is today. And before we get started, only about 0.4% of viewers are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribing and turning on notifications really helps support the channel. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. In CIG's latest letter from the chairman last month, which I know I'm a little late to, but it does provide some very important context and information as to what 2026 has in store, Chris Roberts laid out two clear goals that define 2025: improving stability and quality of life in Star Citizen while continuing regular content updates, and pushing Squadron 42 towards beta and a 2026 release. By their own metrics, they made real progress. Player engagement hit record highs, server disconnections dropped dramatically, and the pace of updates increased to a level the project had never sustained before. That context matters because 2026 is not being framed as another year of waiting for foundations, it's being framed as the year those foundations are finally used. The single most important takeaway for Star Citizen heading into 2026 is the continued evolution of server meshing. Static server meshing was the breakthrough that allowed the universe to expand beyond a single server's limitations, and according to Roberts, it has been running reliably at scale since its introduction. Every day, it supports tens of thousands of concurrent players across shared instances with hundreds of players each, something very few games even attempt. In 2026, the next step is dynamic server meshing, which allows the server architecture to reconfigure itself in real time based on player activity and load. This is the technology that determines whether Star Citizen can truly function as a massively multiplayer game at large scales, supporting larger events, denser locations, and more players sharing the same universe without artificial caps. While the expansion of the universe will continue, 2026 does not appear to be about rapid star system growth. After delivering 2 star systems in the span of 12 months, the focus now shifts towards making the existing universe deeper and more interconnected. Rather than racing to add more destinations, CIG is signaling a move towards adding meaningful content within the systems already in place, improving mission flow between them, and ensuring that travel, risk, and reward feel intentional rather than empty. In other words, it's less about how big the universe is and more about how alive it feels. One of the clearest examples of this shift is the introduction of what CIG calls Genesis planets. These represent the next evolution of planetary technology, offering higher visual fidelity, denser and more dynamically assembled biomes, and environments driven by both natural rules and designer intent. Combined with new Starkitect locations and a dedicated AI population management system, these planets are meant to feel inhabited rather than static. Instead of every world feeling like a beautifully rendered backdrop, 2026 is positioned as the year planets begin to function as ecosystems, complete with appropriate NPC populations and more complex interactions. System depth is also a major theme moving into 2026, especially following the introduction of engineering in Alpha 4.5. Engineering is not presented as a finished system, but as a foundation for a more physically grounded and crew-focused ship experience. Roberts is clear that future work will tie engineering into physically based destruction through Maelstrom, more advanced shield systems, and eventually crafting. This confirms that CIG is doubling down on the long-promised multi-crew vision, where coordination and role specialization matter. How well this evolves, especially for solo players, will likely be one of the most closely watched aspects of the game throughout 2026. Some of the most important work planned for 2026 isn't flashy at all. Inventory, insurance, and cross-patch persistence are all receiving major attention, with the stated goal of making them faster, more stable, and easier to interact with. These systems have existed in various forms for years and have often been sources of frustration. The fact that CIG is explicitly calling them out as priorities suggests that 2026 is about fixing the underlying MMO infrastructure rather than layering new features on top of fragile systems. The surprise experimental VR compatibility released alongside Alpha 4.5 also hints at where the engine is heading. Roberts frames VR not as a marketing feature, but as something enabled by years of engine optimization, physicalized interactions, and the transition to Vulkan. VR in Star Citizen is still early and rough, but its existence at all in a shared, persistent universe is notable. In 2026, it's likely to remain optional and experimental, but its gradual refinement will serve as a visible indicator of how far the engine has come. On the Squadron 42 side of things, the picture is clearer than it's ever been, but also still kind of confusing, as we haven't gotten too much information since CitizenCon in 2024. The campaign is now fully playable from start to finish, content complete, and moving through polish, optimization, and bug fixing on the road to beta and release. Roberts emphasizes that there will not be a long marketing build-up, suggesting that when Squadron 42 is ready, it will simply arrive. When that happens, it will have a direct impact on Star Citizen itself, freeing up teams, allowing technology developed for the single-player campaign to flow back into the persistent universe, and hopefully shifting public perception of the entire project almost overnight. It's important to be realistic about what 2026 probably won't be. It is not going to be a 1.0 release, the end of wipes, or the moment when every promised system is fully realized. Star Citizen will almost certainly remain an evolving alpha with bugs, balance issues, and unfinished mechanics. But the difference now is that the project is no longer waiting on missing technology as an explanation. For the first time in its history, Star Citizen is standing on the foundation it spent more than a decade building. 2026 won't decide whether the game is finished, but it will decide whether that foundation can finally support the living universe it has always promised. And that makes the year ahead one of the most important in the project's entire history. What are some things you are hoping to see in 2026? Are you optimistic after 2025? Are you hoping to see Squadron 42 released later this year? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you're curious about the game and decide to pick it up for yourself or try the game out during a free fly event, make sure to check out the link down below for some more information. As always, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.